My first speaker today, our first speaker today, because she is all for us, Miss Lani Grass.
Yay.
Lani, yay, Lani. Oh, I love it. I'm so honored that she is speaking for us today. You are going to get to know a little bit about Lani now, and then also when that summer edition, which just came out today to all of you that are watching. She has a wonderful story, The New Wave, Claiming Your Throne in Dentistry as Women. And so thank you. Yes, wear the crown, The New Wave, Claiming Your Throne. And Lani Grass is a career life coach and speaker. She is the founder of waveofwomen.com and the speaker platform Confidence Catalyst First Time Speaker Series. She spends her time working with women on identifying their authentic confidence, how they want to show up in the world, and then build a path to self-actualizing. Lani is known for leadership coaching and her programs Personal Brand Blueprint and Women of Influence in Dentistry. She and her husband own a dental practice in Portland, Oregon. Lani's burning desire is to help women recognize and drop their limiting beliefs so they can create what they want in life and stop being a best kept secret. Please help me welcome Lani Grass. Yay!
Hi, everyone. Oh, thank you, Anne. Thank you for allowing me to be on this platform. I'm really honored. How'd you guys like my walk-in song? Obviously, I really liked that because my whole business is called Wave of Women. And I have a story about why I'm so passionate about working with women. So I'm coming live from Portland, Oregon. I'm about 3 years behind the East Coast, and I'm so excited to be here. So I want to just give you a little heads up. This talk that I normally do, the Ignite the Power of Your Personal Brand, is usually about 45 minutes. I'm going to condense it into 20 minutes, but we're going to have more time to talk about it in our breakout session. So I'm super excited about it. You know, a lot of people, I am a life and personal branding coach, and a lot of people ask me, how did you come to do this? So I will tell you a little bit about the how, but mainly my why, because I think it's so important to know why that you are doing what you're doing, right? Because you have to be able to connect to it and feel really passionate about it. And I know that I'm speaking to a group which you're at least entrepreneur minded if you're not at least doing something on your own. So I love the audience I'm speaking to today because I'm definitely one of you. 11 years ago, I started my business when I was living in Hawaii, and it was at the time called Backstage. Backstage is a metaphor for me working backstage to put my clients out in front of the world. So when Backstage was founded, it was an image and styling company. And I would work with women on helping them create the outer image that matched who they were becoming on the inside. And I love doing that work. I still do a little bit of that work today. But as I found out, I was getting to know my clients and I was knowing their story, I realized something really important. People would come to me for image and style, but what they really wanted was confidence. Confidence in what they wanted to do next. It's so interesting to me how much education we can have, how much credibility we can have, and we still don't claim it the way that men do to be able to move to the next level. And it's become my passion, and it's driven me in my business ever since. So over time, my business evolved into Wave of Women, and I have a lot of programs for women in dentistry. Okay, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But I want to tell you how life coaching and all that evolved into personal branding. And that has to do with my why. And that story has to do with my mother, who she did pass away years ago, but there's a powerful story behind this. And it's something that I hope you listen to and hope you find your why in your business if you don't have it yet. Years ago, when my mother was, we're from Thailand. My mother was raised in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Her father was came from the Channel Islands in England. And he brought over the first strawberries and created the first strawberry plantation in Chiang Mai. It was also a tobacco plantation. So my mother was raised in a house that looked like it was a Southern style house that's still there in Chiang Mai, and it was a plantation style home. She was raised, went to like a British boarding school where she got, to me, it was this weird British accent, which I never understood where she got that from. And she never did really explain that to me. I put a lot of pieces together after she died. But here's the story, is that she was very connected and she was educated, became a teacher, traveled the world with the YWCA in a women's leadership capacity. It was really, I saw pictures of her just dressed to the nines. And I know that she must have felt really good about herself because of the way she presented herself, right? She spoke about this part of her life with so much pride. When she got married, it was a little bit of an arranged marriage when she married my father. It was like two families coming together. It was kind of this seems to make sense. So these guys, they get married. She's in love with him. They even had like the royal family at their wedding, which is, I don't think it's super uncommon in Thailand because they have monarchy, right? So here's this big to do. And a couple of years into the relationship, the marriage, I'm born. My mother realizes that he is an alcoholic. He is not coming home. He gambles. And when he started cheating on her, she drew the line. She divorced him. Now, back in the day in Thailand, you do not divorce. You do not, it's not even about for religion. It's a cultural norm. You just don't do it, especially in this type of relationship. But my mother had it. She left him. And my mother's family reminded her, if you leave him, you will be disowned. And she was. She left him. She got completely ostracized and cut off from her family. So as a really young girl, she took me to Hawaii to live. She met her second husband. Guess what? He was abusive too, in a different way. Here's where the story gets interesting. When I was really young, when she was being abused, she was being hit in another room at night. And she'd come, I could hear it going on. As a young girl, in the morning, she would come out and out of the room and she'd be completely dressed to the nines, like normal, makeup, hair, her attitude, she had like switched it, an on switch, came out, and I'd watch her as she'd answer the phone or people would come to the door and she'd just put on this persona of everything is perfectly fine. She'd be laughing and chatting like everything was fine. And I looked at her in disbelief and I was really disappointed because she could pretend to be something she wasn't. And I remember that sticking with me. And I think that's where my highest value of liking people who are down to earth and authentic came from. It was in that time. I didn't even know why she did it until years later when I was giving a talk and these facts started presenting themselves. What I realized years later, actually after she died, was why she came out of the room and did that was because she had two choices. She could either lay in the ground on a heap or she could pull herself together and reconnect to who she was, her self-identity, which in other words is her brand, right? It's who she was before everything fell apart. She knew that she had it and she connected to it because it was the only way she could survive. When I realized that part of the story, it hit me home so much because it was a big part of healing for me, but also because I knew how powerful it was for women to know who they are and to have something to anchor to. Because there are times in your life when you're going to need it to, self-actualize, meet your potential, but then there are other times that you may need it to recenter and reclaim that self-identity when things could be falling apart. Because our lives, of course, are not perfect at all times, right? I'd love to see if any of this resonates with you. I'd love to see you nod or like raise your hands. I know I can't see everyone in here. Thank you so much. I do like to see you and know if you're listening. Thank you. So I want to ask you this question. How many of you have moments where you glimpse your potential? So for me, let me explain. Okay, I know. So Anne, thank you. So when I'm exercising, when I'm on elliptical, I'm listening to my favorite music, I'll get like a thought that goes, oh, I should say this, or I should teach this. I should be on the stage and do this. And I'm all excited because I'm listening to like I'm Every Woman or something like that, right? And then I'm like, oh, I feel so good. And I get off my elliptical and I'm like, it's so good. And then it just starts diluting itself. And I start, okay, well, I mean, that was great, but my mind starts like telling me that this is not really you. You're not ready for that. What are you thinking? Whatever. And I think our minds do that to ourselves. Okay. It's interesting because our brain tries to keep us safe and pulls us back into our comfort zone. And it's really important at that moment. I've realized when you have those downloads and the preview of what you could be doing, to take action, at least one thing, at least write it down. Write it down in your phone and notes. I could be doing this. I mean, because why are you having this thought? It's not coming out of thin air, especially if it keeps on recurring. If you have a thought like that, hold on to it, take at least one action on it. How many ladies in their room are speakers? I'm not saying professionally, but speak. Okay. How many of you would like to be a speaker? How many of you have a message that you want to share with other people that would help other people? So I want to tell you a couple of things. It's up to you to let the world know that you're here. Okay, it's up to you. The other thing you need to know is there's room for everyone. And how I know this is the world is always looking for its next love song, aren't we? There's room for everyone. And the purpose of this talk is to help you understand that it's really important to understand who you are so you can play a bigger role in this. And if you do create a powerful personal brand, it will actually attract opportunities and the right people to you. It makes your life makes it so wonderful, okay? So my talk today is called Ignite the Power of Your Personal Brand. Now I've been teaching this personal brand blueprint for years, and I'm going to give you pieces out of it because that's who I am. It's something that I highly value. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, says, your personal brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. Isn't that crazy? So what I took out of that is that whether or not I just built my brand, I already have one. It's like, okay, so, you need to think about this, right? The good news is that your brand can evolve and change over time. And if you haven't been building one on purpose, it's definitely not too late. So why should you build a brand? Because your brand helps you connect with other people, but it also builds confidence from within. Okay, so this is why it's so important. And your brand doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. It does not. You just need to play a bigger role in who you are. Never assume that loud is strong and quiet is weak. That's one of my favorite sayings because I'm an introvert. Curious, how many of you are introverts or self-identify as an introvert? Do you know that every time I ask this question, it could be a row of entrepreneurs, men and women, dental students, dentists, at least 50% of the room raises their hand. And of course, I'm an introvert. And what that tells me is that there's more than 50% of the room that are introverts and 50% of the room is raising their hand because we don't like to be the center of attention, right? So this is why I'm going to talk a little bit about this because personal branding doesn't mean that you have to just put yourself out there loudly. You just have to put yourself out there powerfully, okay? You do not have to do a ton of videos. You don't have to do a bunch of selfies. You don't have to present a perfect image online. In fact, I highly recommend you do not do that. Present a perfect image online because it's not relatable. A strong brand shows who and what you are. So let's talk a little bit about brand promise. And I'm going to give you some great examples of a brand promise. A brand promise is what other people can expect when they interact with you in person and online. So let me give you a few examples of a strong brand promise. Even Coca-Cola has one. Coca-Cola, they inspire moments of optimism and uplift. Okay, all their commercials are like that. Volvo, they promise automotive safety. Okay, a little bit boring. Let's talk about Oprah Winfrey. Winfrey's brand promises personal development, spirituality, empowerment, hacks to your best life, right? Beyonce, well, we know who Beyonce is, but what do we think about when we think about Beyonce? We think about confidence, sexy, empowerment. mother. We think about businesswoman, and she's also a feminist. Okay. So she has a strong brand. And a brand is really important. There's a couple of really important aspects of a brand promise to make other people trust you. It has to be consistent. And this is why I talk about authenticity and consistency, because it's almost impossible to pretend to be something you're not over time, right? And who wants to do that? How exhausting is that? Foundation to building a strong brand is being authentic and also being in alignment. So let's talk about Oprah again. It's so easy and recognizable. You notice her brand promise shows up consistency in every channel. Whoever she's interviewing, whatever movie she's doing, whatever talk she's doing, whatever conference, it is all in alignment with who she is. So even though she's doing really big things that would seem very hard, and I'm not saying they're not, in some ways it's effortless because she's just playing bigger in who she is. When has she ever shown up differently? This is why her brand is so powerful, okay? And this is why it's important for you to do the work in who you really are, so you can show up in that way, okay? So step number one, this is going to take a little bit of reflection. Let me see, how are we for time? Okay, get clear on who you are. So let me talk about this. Getting clear on who you are, a couple of aspects. Know your values. Your values are how you see the world. It's your lens on the world. It's how you judge yourself. It's how you judge other people. It's what's important in life for you. And so you already have values. And if you want a more comprehensive list, I actually have one. I can email you, but you can also Google it. Values are things like positivity, recognition, spirituality, ambition, cheerfulness, balance, intuition, education. Now, if you think about those words I just gave you, think about how that might play into how you view everything in your life and other people. Your values are yours. You can't judge anybody else on having different values, but you have to get clear on who you are, okay? So you need to know yourself. The other thing that I highly recommend you figure out, if you had all the courage you needed, if there were no barriers, what would you do in the world? What would you do? Who would you be? What kind of changes do you want to see in the community and the world? If you don't know yet, spend some time figuring that out, write it down, okay? Step number 2, discover and tell your story. Now, I told you my backstory about my why, right? Here's one easy way to figure out your story without, going into a huge ordeal. Do a timeline. Do a timeline from the time that you were young to the time you are now huge. It could be, my timeline goes like this because there's so much to write. It can't be like linear because I'm so old. I'm in my mid 50s, by the way. So mine goes like this. So the timeline starts when I'm a kid, and it goes, I was born in Thailand. My mom divorced my father, and she remarried, blah, blah, blah. We moved here. This is where I did, and then I got married, and everything I did this, I had trouble here. The thing, not only the good things, but the milestones that have caused big challenges for you that you had overcome, especially write those down. The reason why is you want to connect where you were to where you are now and see how the dots connect. You will find your story in there, okay? It's one easy way. And you probably will have huge aha moments doing this. The other thing is that you also need to know who you are right now and just bits of who you are. Because if you're going to build a brand, one of the easiest ways to do this is to create a brand on social media. How many of you are on social media? Well, obviously we find you, right? Most of you are on social media making posts, right? So one of the things people say to me is, I don't know what kind of content to write. Well, you need to write about yourself because you want to connect with your audience. So let me just tell you some random facts about me so that you can have an example, okay? And you'll feel like you know me a little better. So, I've been in practice for 11 years. My husband's a dentist in our family. We own a small practice in Portland, okay? I built my whole business on word of mouth referrals, social media, and personal branding and speaking. My husband's 18 years younger than me. I'm in my mid 50s. Oh, and didn't know that? Did I not tell you that?
I knew he was younger, but I didn't know it was, did you say
18?
18 years. Well, my goodness.
Yep.
He did darn well, because you guys look like a perfect couple. That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
I got a thumbs up from Christy. Thank you. Thank you. So, we've been married 19 years and we have a daughter that's 15. I've got 2 grown kids from a previous marriage who are nurses. I love to spend time in my garden. I vegetable and I flower garden. I'm a huge landscaper. I love to entertain and I hate to cook because I hate to measure. But I only will cook super easy things I don't have to measure. But I love to eat things that need to be measured, like sweets. Like all baked things need to be measured when you cook. I love all of that. So pies, cookies, cakes, especially coconut cake, donuts, that I'm all about that. Okay. Now, why am I telling you those things? I just gave you about 100 connecting points. If you would do this for yourself and just write down facts about who you are, you will have them immediately a whole bunch of content that you can use to connect with your audience. And guess what? When you connect with them as your authentic self, you will filter out everything that's for you and everyone that's for you. And that's the beauty of personal branding, right? It does so much of the work for you. So know who you are, show up in your authentic and aligned life. Step number 3, know how to explain your true benefits. So I want you to pay attention to this part because we're going to talk about this in the breakout session. Your obvious benefit, and we'll talk about obvious benefit and true benefits. Obvious benefits of you and working with you are things like your skill set, your production, like what you're able to do. Do you do Excel? Do you do social media well? Like, what are the tactical things that you're good at? Those are your obvious benefits, your work experience. Your emotional benefits, the true benefits, are the emotional benefits of working with you. This is where people don't know how to explain it. Okay. Do you remember earlier when I said people come to me for image and style, but what they really got was confidence? This is what I want you to work on. Okay. Now listen, if you are working in a dental practice, for instance, your emotional benefit could be that you make patients feel safe and heard, right? That you build long-term relationships with your patients, right? And for your team, you could bring a positive culture to the practice that makes your team love working with you. So when, in an instance, if I were to come up with this statement that I actually want you to write down so we can talk about it in breakout, it is called, I want you to write this down. People come to me for blank, but what they really get is blank. Let me repeat that. People come to me for blank, but what they really get is blank. And I want you to talk about your emotional benefit, your obvious benefit, and then your emotional benefit, just as a starting point. So if you're a dental hygienist, you could say, people hire me for dental hygiene, but what they really get is someone who makes them feel safe and cared for and builds a positive culture in the practice. If you said that in an interview, you would get the job, right? Because it's all about how people feel when they interact with you, okay? It's so important for you to discover who you are and maybe rediscover who you are, okay? And so please put in the work to do this. And I'm gonna leave you with my closing quote that I really love. It's so simple. Ready? She remembered who she was and the game changed.